Greetings, Benjamin J. from BENZTRAINZ with another in the series. Well, a last of the motors made out of parts as I am out of wheels. So I'm going to have to buy some more junkers to use for parts. In any case, put this motor together, has mismatched push rods, as they all do, and just made it out of parts out of the parts box. And I was out of the nuts for the brush plate. As you see, I've installed standard 632 nuts on this to hold the brush plate in place. But like I said, it has mismatched push rods. E-unit was completely dead, and just got this wired and put together. So did the E-unit bypass. Now the problem with this one was the coil was gone. And once that coil goes, this E-unit is never going to work again. And even if you take it apart, there is no way to repair it unless you want to start winding coils, which I have absolutely no intention of doing. So like all the others, I have bypassed the E-unit. So anyway, made out of parts, mismatched push rods, and I ran this on the bench. In fact, I just put the light bulb in it. Ran it on the bench. It actually runs quite well. So I'm going to put it on the rail. I've installed the adapter so I can couple the motor directly to a consist. So let's hook this up. All right, we're on the rail. Let's see how this goes. Another single reduction motor made out of parts. As you can probably tell, it has a silver push rod on one side and a black push rod on the other. But this is running really, really well. I ran it on the bench for about 5 minutes. And it runs well. There's no problem with it at all. It runs forward only, of course, because of the bypass. But the nice thing about it is the fact that it is running. So it gives me another motor. And like I said, this will be the last one, as I am out of wheels. So I will probably scrape that black push rod to make it silver. And they match, they're just different colors. But as you see, that's running really well. So as I always stress, don't overlook the junk. As I always say, if you have a way to pull the wheels off, if you have a wheel puller and a wheel press, you can fix virtually any Marx motor you come across, regardless of what's wrong with it, if you have the part to fix it with. In many cases, this simple bypass will get a lot of these motors running. If it needs a part, obviously you need the part. You can get intermediate gears and most any other part from Grossman's. But in most cases, you can repair these things within a matter of minutes. In most cases, the E-unit doesn't work, or the intermediate gear has worn out. That's really the two major problems. Occasionally, you'll find a bad brush plate. In lots and lots of cases, the brush springs themselves are dirty. The brushes are worn out. And trust me, these brushes wear out. And you pull a brush out of a 1950s locomotive, and it's about half the size of a new brush. And you'd be surprised, dropping new brushes in these things, cleaning the armature, cleaning the springs. It makes an absolutely incredible difference how these motors run. So this one actually looks pretty good. It wasn't in terrible condition. It just didn't work. And when these things came in, I would scavenge them for parts, of course, to fix something else. But now that I've gotten those intermediate gears and gotten proficient at repairing these motors, I'm going back through the parts box, putting these things back together. In this case, the only thing that was really wrong with this was the E-unit didn't work. And like I said, the switch was good inside the E-unit, but the coil itself was bad. And there's only a couple of ways to address that. If the coil is bad and it doesn't cycle, you can wedge a toothpick up inside the E-unit to try to jam it into forward. That works sometimes. The easiest way, of course, is just to simply bypass the E-unit, which is the easiest, simplest, logical way to do it. Like I said, I am no fan of the E-unit. I detest the fact that Marx locomotives always start in reverse. And if you have a sticky E-unit, and you have say a long tin litho consist, and this thing sticks and then slams into reverse, you'll derail the entire consist. And that's one thing that I really, really disliked about the Marx E-unit. If it was selectable, it'd be a different story, but it's not. They always start in reverse, and I just do not like that. So in any case, another motor repaired, up and running, mismatched push rods on this one, as usual, but it is running. And as I said, I didn't have the original nuts for the brush plate, so I used standard 632 nuts from the hardware store. And it works, of course. It's not original, but who cares? It's running. That's the important part. And so you can make a running motor out of some real trashy stuff that you can find on eBay that simply did not run. And a few minutes of your time, if you have the tools to do it with, and if you have the parts, you can put these things together, get them up and running in just literally a matter of minutes. There's really not very many parts in a Marx locomotive. If the armature is good and you have brushes and brush springs, in 99.9% of the cases, the field coil is good. If the field coil is good and the armature is good, the motor will run. The stumbling block, of course, is the E-unit. Once these things go out, these Marx motors are dead. The motor's never going to run again until you completely disassemble this. And that means pulling the wheels, pulling the brush plate, splitting the case, pulling the E-unit out, unsoldering it, disassembling the E-unit, repairing it, assembling it, putting it all back together, and then hope it works. And because it was defective, how long is it going to work? That's the thing. The nice thing about doing the bypass is once it's bypassed, this motor is going to run forever. Literally forever. Keep this thing oiled and run it occasionally, it'll run the rest of your life. It'll run for 100 years. You may have to replace the brushes and clean it, but other than that, there's really not much to go wrong with this. It is just, after all, an AC induction motor. So it's really straightforward to repair them, and in this case, it took a few minutes. This thing's been sitting forever, and I had used it for parts because the E-unit was dead, and it didn't work. But in this case, as you see, it's up and running. This thing's been sitting in the parts box for probably a year, maybe longer than that. And when these things would come in, they wouldn't run. I wasn't interested in fixing them. I would just strip them for the mechanical parts. And then, of course, little by little, I got proficient at actually repairing the motors. And then I came up with that bypass and the toggle switch, so you can actually add a manual E-unit if you want one. So now I'm repairing them, basically just give myself something to do. But also, it's nice to be able to go through the parts box, pick out a bunch of parts, assemble them, test them on the bench, get them running, throw it on the rail and test it, put it in a body and give yourself a new locomotive that doesn't cost anything. It's a lot of fun. It's really gratifying to take some old junk motor that didn't run, and in this case, just grab some parts out of the parts box, assemble it. Like I said, 2 mismatched nuts, but they work. It's on there. It's never going to come back off again. And did the bypass. This thing is up and running. And like I said, it'll run virtually forever now. So another Marx single reduction motor made basically out of junk parts. Anyway, it's up and running. This will be the last one I build. I am out of wheels. I have wheels. I'm just out of wheels with push rods. So, in any case, just wanted to do one final video of the last motor that I build until I get some more parts, which means buying some more junk off of eBay. The problem with buying junk locomotives is I buy them all the time, but in most cases I get them running, so I never use them for parts. And so in the last, I don't know, 2 weeks I've built, I think, 5 of these motors. So getting down there, and now that I've got those new intermediate gears, it gave me a chance to take some real junk and rebuild it and get it running. So I've built 3, or 2 with the new intermediate gear. I thought I was going to need one on this, but the gear was actually good enough to use for now. It runs, as you see, it actually runs quite well. No muss, no fuss. So another junk motor. This one just required some basic repair, and I had stripped a lot of the parts off of it to fix something else. But like I said, it's been in the parts box for a long time, at least a year. So anyway, it's up and running. I want to do one last video. This will be the last motor I build for a while. Well, until I get some more junk parts and or some more junk locomotives that I can take apart and use for parts. Like I said, in most cases, I get them running. So, but one last video of these old Marx motors. And like I always stress, don't overlook the junk. It doesn't take much to get one of these things running. A few minutes of your time. Once you've done a couple of them, you're an expert at it. And in a lot of cases, you can pull it out of the box, put it on the rail, and tell what's wrong with it just by what it does or what it doesn't do in a lot of cases. So just a quick follow-up video. As always, you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email. BENZTRAINZ@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for watching.